Good evening and a warm welcome to all. I am Shobna Kanodia and on behalf of K Ratings, welcome you to our today's webinar on Indian banking sector improved resilience and sincerely appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar. Our other speakers for today is Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, Senior Director at K Ratings, and Mr. Aditya Achrekar, Associate Director. Please be informed that we will be having a Q&A session at the end of our panel discussion. In case of any queries, please key in your queries. May I request Mr. Sanjay to begin the proceedings, please?
Thank you, Shobna, and good afternoon to all of you. India has a relative level of credit to GDP ratio when compared to other countries in the world. So when you look at China, India has a GDP level which is one-fifth that of China. Still, the credit to GDP ratio of India is one-third to that of China. So, and it needs to improve the same. Access to credit and cost of credit needs to be addressed. Further, in India, the credit market is dominated by banking sector, with the bond market still in a developing phase. Consequently, the banking sector's health is a priority area as it plays a key role in the financial intermediation in the economy. The recent period was marked by a structural shift in the performance of India's banking sector, with the sector seeing consolidation. A reduction in the overhang of stress assets continued up to the early part of FY20. However, the pandemic and the resultant economic disruption have impinged on the credit demand and could lead to a further credit deterioration in the performance of banks, resulting in the need for higher provisioning, which would impact the performance of the banks and lead to requirement of higher capital. In the webinar today, we would provide an overview of the industry along with an analysis of the Q2 FY21 results, analysis of NPAs and capitalization. Outlook and rating perspectives would also be discussed. Now handing back to Shobna to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Sanjay. Now we may discuss the credit and deposit growth rate of banking industry. The bank credit growth has generally been closely linked to the pace of economic growth. On an average, the bank credit growth has been between 2.5 to 3 times the GDP growth, which was registered between FY10 to FY14. However, the bank growth has grown by a smaller multiple to GDP by around 2.2 to 1.4 times, which was largely owing to the slowdown in economy. This period which I'm referring to, you can see on the slide, which is FY15 to FY18. On the other hand, the bank credit grew by 2.2 times of the GDP growth in FY19, which we can see here in this region. This is the highest level since FY15, but lower than any average of 2.5 times registered between FY10 to FY14. While FY20 witnessed slowdown in bank credit growth as well as low bank credit as a multiple of GDP. The trend continued even in the following period, which is not given in this table, but the GDP growth has been further declined and it has been at a lower level. Hit by the nationwide lockdown that impacted the economic activity for most part of H2 FY21 led to the shrinking of the GDP to its lowest level. Further, if we look at the same in the different manner, globally, considering the bank credit as a percentage to GDP rate, Luxembourg has the highest rate, that is 445%, followed by Ireland, Switzerland, Canada, Australia among the top 15 countries. Among the Asian countries, China ranks first at 209% in FY20, whereas India stands at 63.3% in FY20, which is way behind as compared to other countries, which reflects how much difference India needs to travel. As can be seen in the given chart, bank credit growth continued to grow in double digit by FY19 until quarter ended June 19, which was led by higher disbursal by banks, while bank deposit grew by 9.4% during FY19, which we can see here on the screen. It can be noted that previously, at the time of demonetization, banks received woofing deposits as people deposited high denomination currency notes that were withdrawn from circulation on November 8. As a result, the deposit grew by 15.3% to rupees 107.6 lakh crores. At present, the banks continue to remain risk averse due to the pandemic led uncertainty. Recently, the credit growth decelerated to 5.7 to 5.8%, which we can see it here. During the last two fortnights ended November 6 and November 8, okay, reflecting subdued demand compared to a year ago level, which again reflects the risk aversion in the banking system towards the corporate segment. Additionally, as per market sources, couple of large corporates have paid a large portion of their debt, pushing the bank credit growth downwards. Also, ample liquidity and ample bank money have moved through investment book instead of loan book. Considering investment to be at around 8.5 lakh crore rupees, the bank credit would have been rupees 111.4 lakh crores. The SLR investments grew at 20.2% year on year in September 2020 compared with 7.1% in the previous year due to banks' increased preference for government securities and as RBI has allowed banks to hold fresh acquisition of SLR investments. While bank credit growth remained flat over last fortnight, which we can see it here 5.7 and 5.8%, and was restricted from declining further as consumer had started purchasing with the arrival of festive season, which is the Diwali season, which was last month, leading to retail demand along with various online shopping portals offering Diwali sales offer. Additionally, the bank growth was also supported by disbursement under ECLGS scheme, which has been further extended till March 31, 2021. However, SEBs are being very selective with their credit portfolios due to asset quality concerns, whereas deposits increased by 10.9%, which we can see in this region as of November 2020, compared with last year's level of 9.7%. In the recent times, deposit growth has been faster compared to the last 2 years, whereas deposits registered a growth of 8 to 10% between the last 2 years. Consequently, the banking system has remained in liquidity surplus position, which can be ascribed to deposit growth consistently outpacing the credit growth. However, government borrowings limited the banking system liquidity surplus during the last fortnight. Now we may move on to the next slide. Okay. So here you can see a trend between retail, wholesale, and overall. Here the wholesale segment includes industrial and service segment, whereas the overall includes retail, wholesale, along with agriculture and allied activities. The year-on-year growth in non-food credit as of September 2020 was 5.8%, approximately 230 bips lower than which was registered in the previous year. The overall credit was slower on account of extremely marginal growth. One second. Yeah, yeah. So here we can see that the amongst the service sector, there are trade industry which has grown at 5.5% in September 2019 and increased to 11.5% in the recent times. Large industries account for around 82.7% share in the total outstanding to credit to industries, and growth in this segment reported a reduction of 0.6% in September 2020. Micro, small, and medium industries grew by 3.2% in the quarter ended September 2020 as compared to a negative growth in the previous year. In absolute terms, the outstanding credit for micro, small, and medium industries grew by 4.6 lakh crores in September 2019 to 4.8 lakh crores in September 2020. Under the 3 lakh crore of ECLGS scheme, which is for MSMEs, banks have so far sanctioned
ongoing business system
2.03 lakh
तो
crore
इंटरनेशनल
until
एजेंसी
October
क्रेडिट करता है,
2020.
I don't think any Indian करता है.
Though infrastructure has the maximum share
But
of 34.6% in the overall industries, it has registered a muted growth of 1.1% in the quarter ended September 2020. Whereas tourism, hotels, and restaurant segment accounted for the highest growth. Of the total 9 segments, each segment registered growth in the industrial segment. The growth in retail loans continued to decline in September 2020 with growth of 9.2% as compared to 16.6% a year ago. Amongst the retail loan, housing loans continues to remain the single largest segment of lending in outstanding credit to retail loan portfolio. Housing loan segment has slowed down to 8.5% in quarter ended September 2020 as compared to 19.3% in September 2019. It accounts for around 53% share of the total outstanding in retail segment. Amongst other segments of retail loan, educational loans registered a degrowth of 4.5%, whereas credit card outstanding loan registered a growth of 6.3%. However, consumer durables registered a growth of 22.3% share. However, the share of consumer durables in the overall retail loan portfolio is just 0.3% share. Now we may move on to the next slide. Okay. So here we may look at the interest rate transmission which has happened in the recent months. The lending rates of SEBs have fallen to their lowest level over 4.5 years, reflective of the progress in transmission of the policy rate cuts. The median 1-year MCLR of SEBs in October 2020 at 7.35% was 5 bips lower than a month ago. Even though the RBI has cut key interest repo rates by 115 bips since end March 2020, the median 1-year MCLR of SEBs has declined by only 65 bips in the subsequent 7 months. The weighted average lending rate of fresh rupee loans sanctioned by SEBs stands at 8.29% in September, which was 6 bips lower than the previous a month ago period. The WALR of SEBs has declined by 23 bips during April to September 2020. The rate cuts and transmission, which has been happening, which everyone is aware of, to the end borrowers by bank led to low weighted average lending rates for fresh loans. The rate cuts would work more effectively when credit growth picks up, as banks are very selective in giving fresh loans due to asset quality concerns. However, the spreads between TDR and WALR of SEBs came down by only 11 basis points, which was led by decline in spreads of PVBs. On the other hand, the spreads between TDR and WALR for outstanding loan increased to 401 basis point in September 20 as against 352 basis point in September 2019, which was again owing to the increase in spreads of PVBs by higher basis point. Here below given is the various outstanding loans and advances rates for various industries. Now we may move on to the next slide. After going through the credit and deposit growth, we may now examine the second year quarter results of the set of SEBs. Looking at this region, the marginal increase in the interest income can be observed in Q2 FY21, which you can see it here. This was due to the subdued credit offtake during the quarter, along with fall in interest rate. However, the interest income growth was restricted from declining further, which was attributed to decrease in gross NPAs from rupees 9.3 lakh crores in quarter ended September 20 to rupees 8 lakh crores in quarter ended FY21. In the previous quarter, which was June 20, and the interest income grew at 3.7%, as despite the moratorium, the interest on loan was accrued, and therefore it was considered in interest income. Also, in the next quarter, in the previous quarter, March 20, the interest income grew at a slower pace of 4.2% compared with 16% in the previous year, which was again due to the lower demand and risk aversion in the banking system, which led to further weakness in the credit growth, led by the nationwide lockdown which started from March 23, 2020 onwards. As can be seen in the previous slide, the spreads between TD
Okay. NIM of both PSBs and PVBs recorded a marginal improvement as the transmission of rate cuts to the were faster to the depositors as compared to the borrowers. Additionally, in a move to provide relief to the borrowers, the Finance Ministry announced waiver of interest on loans up to rupees 2 crores and also the category which is above rupees 2 crores. However, the SEBs have been opposing the waiver of interest, for which the hearing is still due by the Supreme Court. Now we may move on to the next slide. The previous one, Mridul. Hello, can we go to the previous slide? After
Is
this,
this okay? So, or next slide, Shubna?
this is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So discussing the total income growth of SEBs grew at a slower rate in quarter 2 FY21 vis-a-vis the previous year, owing to the slow growth in both interest income and other income compared with the previous year. The interest income, which accounts for around 86% share of the total income, and the balance 14% accounts to the other income share. Now, can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. Here, we can see the operating expenses, of which employee cost and other expenses both account for similar ratio of 50-50%. The operating expenses of SEBs increased at a slower rate as compared with the previous year due to subdued growth in other expenses, which accounts for a 50% share, as I told you earlier. Okay. The other expenses includes consulting services, postage and stationery, and expenses related to buildings and other fixed assets. It grew at a rate of 1.7%, which we can see in chart 2 in FY21 quarter ended September, as against 12.2% growth in the previous year. This year, as many bank branches were operational for limited working hours due to the spread of COVID-19. However, the total operating expenses growth was capped at 6.1%, which we can see in chart 3, which was owing to 10.8% growth in the employee cost, as against 15.8% growth in the previous year, which we can see here. Of all the SEBs, SBI accounts for around 30% share of the overall SEBs which have revised their wages of the employees during March end quarter, which has resulted in year-on-year increase in employee cost. Okay. This was further led by post-retirement dues of the bank during the quarter, which has supported the increase in employee cost. Further, banks like Canara Bank, Punjab National Bank have also increased their employee cost due to various reasons like a revision in the salaries or maybe due to retirement overdues. The operating expenses are expected to increase in H2 FY21, which is the period starting from now, which has started from October to March 21. Following the wage revision for 12 PSBs and 10 PVBs, which have been pending since 2017, and this was finalized and signed by the Indian Bank Association and Workmen Union on November 11, 2020 last month. The below given chart on movement to cost to income ratio of SCBs improved by 220 bips in quarter ended September 2020 vis-a-vis the previous year, which was mainly owing to the decline in other expenses. Now, can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here we can see the trend of net profit and movement of return on assets. Discussing on this, the overall aggregate net profit of SCBs rose during the quarter, this area, as against a net loss which was registered in the corresponding period. Amongst PSBs, this is this region, okay. Indian Overseas Bank, Indian Bank, and Union Bank of India reported significant profit of rupees more than 2000 crores to okay. Indian Overseas Bank and Indian Bank reported a net profit of about rupees 2000 crores, whereas Union Bank reported around 1500 crores against a net loss which was registered in the previous year of 2000 crores, 1500 crores and 900 crores for these three banks. The profit margin of SCBs have registered positive growth due to fall in credit cost owing to bad loans written off. I was talking about this region. Now, I would like to hand over the PPT to Aditya, who would continue with the discussion on NPAs, capital adequacy, and rating scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobna. So coming to asset quality, move this slide. So coming to asset quality, Indian banks feature among the one of the highest proportion of non-performing assets in recent years. Only Greece and Russia reported a higher ratio, while other countries with a higher ratio than India include Ukraine, Cyprus, Ghana, and Kenya. Non-performing loans eased in advanced economies due to continuous deleveraging and support from government as well as institutional intervention. So if you look at the chart till 2019 asset quality, if you look at 2012, Indian banks were among the lowest NPAs as compared to even other larger global economies. Indian banks saw a significant rise in NPAs from 2015-2016 onwards when the RBI conducted the asset quality review in 2015. And post that, the Indian banks saw the increase in their gross NPAs, which peaked at around rupees 10.2 lakh crore, out of which around 8.4 lakh crore NPAs were with the public sector banks by end of FY18. Since then, the RBI has been pushing banks to reduce the NPA levels by instructing them to refer the top NPAs in the to the NCLT under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code for resolution of assets. In India, the resolution mechanism of stressed assets remains lesser developed, while the resolution process has been gaining some traction post the IBC. However, that process also has seen some teething problem with resolution being slower than expected. Also, if you look at the Indian market, there is a very limited market for sell of stressed assets, and it is not a very active market as compared to developed economies. However, in the last 2 years, if we see, the IBC has process has yielded some results and has led to resolution of some of the large NPAs, as a result, there has been some reduction in the overall NPAs in the system. Apart from this recovery, a large proportion of NPAs have been written off by banks, and the banks have also done some significant amount of technical write-offs. So if you look at the trend, the proportion of NPAs has been reducing quarter on quarter. So the gross NPA levels declined to around 8.9 lakh crore by end of FY20, out of which around rupees 6.8 lakh crore were with the public sector banks. In addition, the banks also have been providing significantly on the NPAs, and the provision coverage ratio has now reached to in the range of around 75% to 77% as on September 2020. However, with this COVID-19 pandemic and the resultant nationwide lockdown imposed by the government from end of March, there was an unprecedented impact on the economic activity, due to which the supply chains disruption and worker movement across the nation were the major challenge, resulting in a decline in the economic activity. The government and the RBI announced several remedy measures to support the financial markets, including banks, like providing the COVID-19 regulatory package, which included multiple measures like providing market liquidity, funding lines by way of TLTRO, that is targeted long-term repo operations, to allow access of cheaper funds to banks and lending institutions. For the borrowers, the RBI provided moratorium of 3 months from March to May 2020 to all cases in case of term loans and working capital facilities, and interest on cash credit and overdraft facilities of standard accounts as on March 1, 2020, which was further extended for up to 3 months, that is for 3 months up to 31st August 2020. Further, the classification of accounts opting for moratorium would be standard and would be re-evaluated at the end of the moratorium. The lenders, including banks, were required to make additional COVID-related provisioning of 10% which would be spread in 2 quarters, that is last quarter of FY20 and the first quarter of FY21. And the above provisions may be adjusted against the actual provisioning requirements from slippages from the accounts reckoned for such provisions. So these are the regulatory support measures, which again include this emergency credit line from banks and NBFCs to up to 25% of total outstanding credit, subordinated debt for SMEs, special liquidity scheme for HFCs, NBFCs, and MFIs, partial credit guarantee schemes for NBFCs, extension of resolution timelines until the prudential framework on resolution of stressed assets. So if you look at during the first half of the current financial year, the quantum of gross NPAs declined largely on account of write-offs and recoveries by some of the large public sector banks. Similarly, as a result, the net NPA also came down to around 2.1 lakh crore, in higher provision coverage by the commercial banks declined to around to a proportion of 7.7% as on September 20. On an overall basis, public sector banks, which accounted for around 75% share of gross NPAs, have experienced a drop in gross NPA ratio to around 9.4% against as on September 20 against 11.6% a year ago. The Honorable Supreme Court of India, in its order on September 3, 2020, ordered all the banks not to classify COVID-19 related defaults as NPA until further notice. However, the banks have done some additional extra provisioning in case these NPAs might be required to be recognized after. So in that amount is around 0.5 to 0.6% of the assets. In addition, RBI also permitted a one-time restructuring of loans across three segments, that is corporate loans, MSME loans, and personal loans. And government also has provided several packages like emergency credit line for SMEs and partial guarantee scheme for NBFC, allowing them to fund the NBFC, fund the SMEs, etc. These measures are likely to help banks to mitigate the expected rise in the GNPA numbers. Although the unlocking has been happening in phases, there have been intermittent spike in COVID positive cases in certain geographical pockets, and the rollout of vaccine would take time, and the situation continues to remain evolving. And there could be some stress visible in the economic environment as which would continue to impact the asset quality of the banks. So there could be an addition in NPAs primarily from the SMA exposures under moratorium which are not eligible for restructuring, lower rated corporates not eligible for restructuring scheme or are negatively affected by the economy, or already stressed companies which could face some liquidity constraints, and there is some unsecured retail loans to which the banks have exposures. So consequently, the estimation of gross NPA is likely to be around 9.5 to 10% by end of FY21. Capital requirement, there is a significant there was a significant requirement for recapitalization of banks, especially the public sector banks. The government announced recapitalization of public sector banks during FY18 and infused around 2.11 lakh crore of equity, out of which rupees 1.35 lakh crore was through recapitalization bonds. So if we look at the trend, the median capital adequacy ratio of public sector banks saw an increase from FY18 till FY20, which was supported by the equity infusion by the government. Also, the core equity capital tier 1 ratio also increased by around 150 to 160 bips to reach around 9.3 to 9.5% range. As against this, the median CAR of the private sector banks remained consistent at around 15% over the last 3 years. Private banks continued to raise capital from the markets and remained well capitalized, bearing a couple of banks which required regulatory intervention to bail them out. As a part of its COVID relief measures, RBI deferred the implementation of the last 0.625% of capital conservation buffer requirement, which was to be met by March 31st, 2020, now to April 1st, 2021. So during the current financial year, with the expected impact on asset quality and requirement for higher provisioning, the larger private sector banks have already raised significant amount of equity capital, and as a result, the median CAR has increased by around 150 bps to around 16.5%, while the median core equity ratio has increased by around 100 bips to 14.3% by end of September. Government support continues to the public sector bank, and it has announced capitalization of rupees 20,000 crore during the current financial year, out of which rupees 5,500 crores was already infused in one of the public sector banks, and the remaining 14,500 crore is expected to be infused during the last quarter of FY21. In addition, some of the public sector banks have raised tier 2 capital by way of tier 2 bond issuance, as well as perpetual bonds, the 81 tier 1 bonds, in order to improve their loss absorption capacity by end of 21. So moving to the rating movement since 31st March 2019, if you look at the total banking sector, the total number of banks in India has declined due to the consolidation and amalgamation of banks. The number of public sector banks has come down from 20 as on 31st March 2019 to around 12 banks currently, and out of that CARE has live ratings on 10 public sector banks, and and there are total 19 private sector banks, out of which CARE rates 13 banks. So the chart at the end shows the current the movement in the ratings. So if you look at the public sector banks, there have been one upgrade, one downgrade, and major there are around 7 banks there has been no change in rating, and changing outlook has been there for 3 banks, out of which one was positive change and 2 were negative, while the public sector banks, the rating continue to factor in the expected government support. In terms of in case of private sector banks, out of the 13 banks, 9 banks there was no change in rating, while there were 1 bank rating which was upgraded and 3 downgrades, whereas 1 rating outlook was changed, a negative change in the outlook. So the overall modified credit ratio, or MCR as we call in rating terms, which is a ratio of upgrades plus no change in rating plus upon the downgrades plus no change, stood at 0.9. So this was an adverse MCR for the period from 31st March till date. And in terms of rating distribution, if you look at the public sector banks, they are out of the 10 banks, 4 are in the AAA category and 4 are in AA, and 2 banks are in the A category. While for private sector banks, 3 banks are in the AAA category, 4 are in AA, 3 banks are in A category, 1 each in BBB and BB, and one private sector bank, CARE has only the short-term rating. So this is how the rating movements have been. I now hand over to Sanjay for the final outlook on the banking sector.
Thank you, Shobna and Aditya, for the extensive coverage. So, as our outlook is as follows. While the financial markets have largely stabilized due to the fiscal and monetary stimulus, the overall growth in GDP going forward continues to remain uncertain. Hence, CARE's outlook on the banking sector would be moderately negative in the near future. With subdued credit growth, the income profile would be impacted, considering lower interest rates and low fee-based income on back of reduction in disbursement of loans. Although the liquidity remains good and the deposit rates have been coming down with operating expenses moderating, the pre-provisioning operating profitability of the bank is expected to remain high and stable. In fact, as per RBI, private sector spreads that is the difference between the lending rate and the term deposit rate, is currently at record high levels. However, the credit cost would impact the overall profitability of the banks. As mentioned by Aditya, NPAs would see a rise during the current year as compared to the decline in the last financial year. Although the level of NPAs would not reach the level 3 years back. Most of the banks have seen high amounts of write-offs and higher provisioning in the last few years, resulting in reduction in gross NPAs and increase in the provision coverage ratio. The banks have further increased provisioning during H1 FY21. At the end of quarter 2 of FY21, the gross NPA figure was at 7.7%. With RBI advised standstill till August 2020 and Supreme Court advised standstill thereon, the incremental gross NPAs, mainly those caused by the pandemic, are not being reflected in the books. As per various reports, about 0.6% was unrecognized at the end of Q2 due to standstill advised by Supreme Court for the month of September alone. There has been steady and large guarantee support by government to assist the credit quality of the underlying assets of the banks. Further, there have been new announcements on relief funding for stressed sector in the ECLGS, and recovery in the economy has been front-ended compared to earlier expectations. CARE had earlier estimated that scheduled commercial banks would end the year with gross NPA figure of around 11%. With the above changes, we now expect that the year-end gross NPA figure, subject to obviously the Supreme Court advice, would be around 9.5 to 10%. Most of the private banks have raised equity capital during the first half of the financial year to enhance buffers to absorb COVID-related shocks and remain well capitalized. In comparison, the public sector banks continue to report lower capital ratios and would require capital support for asset growth. Post-consolidation, the weaker banks have been merged into relatively stronger banks. The banks have raised Tier 2 and additional Tier 1 bond during the current financial year. A couple of public sector banks have also raised equity from the markets. Although the public sector banks have board approvals to raise equity, most are yet to approach markets. However, given the significant capital requirements, we expect public sector banks would continue to require some of the incremental capital support from the government. Government has been supporting the public sector banks and is expected to support in the future. With these words, I would like to hand the mic back to Shobna for the closing comment.
So we begin a Q&A session after this, sir.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
So dear participants, now we will begin a Q&A session. We'll take a break of 2 minutes and then we'll come back to take your queries. You are please requested to key in your questions in the slot provided. I repeat, we'll be having a break of 2 minutes before we come back and take your queries. Thank you.
ठीक है Yeah, welcome back. So there is one query. So what is the status of the Supreme Court stay on declaration of NPAs after 29 September 2020? What will be the impact if the stay is lifted on such declarations? Will the NPAs be huge and unmanageable? Well, the that I think we have already covered in the presentation that most of the banks have declared they had that standstill not happened. What could have been the NPAs? So it is in the range of 0.5 to 0.6%. So the gross NPAs, had it not been put us on a standstill, the recognition would not have been put on standstill. It would have been higher by 0.6%, 0.5, 0.6%. So that is not a significant impact on NPS. There is one question saying what is our expectations for the weaker PSBs going forward? Well, if you look at last couple of years, it is the weaker PSBs which have been merged into the banks who are relatively stronger, and then so as to in fact, if you look at a couple of years back when this recapitalization started, government was initially supporting the weaker banks. So the weaker banks got a majority of the capital as compared to banks who are doing relatively better. However, that kind of was kind of a penalizing the better performing banks. So as at some point the government realized that it is not feasible to keep penalizing the better performing banks. So they decided to merge the weaker banks into relatively stronger banks. There is a query: as per your estimates, which sector will have more pressure on NPA, public or private? I mean, compared if you compare both the banks' asset quality, it is definitely the public sector banks which have witnessed more pressure, and that was also, if we have seen the comparison between private sector and public sector NPAs. So definitely we expect public sector banks to have more pressure of NPAs. As we have already said, and the private sector banks have raised significant amount of capital, while public sector banks still continue to remain dependent on government capital infusion. There is a question: any more mergers or steps towards privatization of PSBs like Central? IOB, government of India infusing 5,500 crore to clean up PSNB could be an indication towards privatization. Well, see, till that is always a government's decision, but then till some privatization happens, government has to continue to support the public sector banks. So though this infusion of capital definitely is a way to support till the I mean, any decision on for further privatization is taken. I mean, that is definitely a government's prerogative, and I mean that decision will be made by the government. There is one question. Given the write-downs that have happened in 81 bonds in the last 8-9 months, will this route of raising money become unattractive? Will banks have to find some other route? That was a bad experience that the industry had, and definitely the amount of 81 bond issuances had gone down. But then we see certain public sector banks, coming out and successfully raising 81 bonds. So, I mean, yes, that is one. I mean, the investors will be more, I mean, they would be more uh, vi- uh, vigilant in investing any 81 bonds. So yeah, the appetite for 81 bonds in the market definitely has gone down. But I mean, after some time, I mean, definitely some banks, once this there is some clarity on this asset quality, these things, so definitely that as a product might see for well capitalized and stronger banks. So there is another query. Do you expect any recoveries from moratorium loans, or are the COVID-19 provisions made by banks as good as written off? Well, if you look at the trend in moratorium, there were two, rather, moratorium was in the phase one and phase two. So with this and there is another query. I'll just answer it both answer the both questions. So second is, what which are the industry sectors which are impacted most due to COVID? If you look at moratorium 2 and moratorium 1, so people opt, or borrowers opting for moratorium 1 was significantly higher as compared to people who have opted for moratorium 2. And by the time moratorium 2 was there, unlocking had started. So definitely, and the provisioning has been made in line with what RBI has suggested. It was an preemptive measure which was uh, prescribed by RBI at the beginning of the moratorium. So definitely there will be some recoveries which will happen as the unlocking happens, and economy, there is some traction and recovery happening in the economy. Sectors which would be impacted most by COVID, I mean, almost every sector has been impacted to a certain extent, because it was a national level lockdown across the country. So definitely especially the sectors which have a man-to-man contact, or movement of people, those kind of sectors will be more impacted. While some sectors have also seen, sharp recovery after this unlocking has happened.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. I think that was the last question taken up for the day because we are running short of time. There are a couple of unanswered queries which probably will try to revert by email across to individually to in your email through your email. Thanks again to your participants for taking your time out and being a part of this Care Ratings webinar. For any further queries, feedback or suggestions, you are most welcome to write us in the feedback box, which will be coming no sooner the webinar ends. And again, apologize for the inconvenience due to the technical glitch. Thank you and goodbye for now.